It is just after the hour, so I'm going to go ahead and get us started. I'm really excited to introduce our presenters today, and I'm really happy to have you all here with us. Before we get started, I'll just ask that you all just keep your volume muted during the talk so that we don't have any interruptions over our speakers. And please feel free to type any and all questions that you have into the chat, and I'll help moderate that when Susu and Blake have finished talking. So I think that's all of our housekeeping. So I want to go ahead and welcome you all. This is our monthly Continuing Textile Traditions panel discussion. And this is a program that we've been doing for about 3 years now, since mid-pandemic. And it's a great opportunity. Every month we hear from a different organization or a group of individuals who are all working in a similar vein. And it's been a really great way to connect with members and the greater textile community. And also I want to share that we are currently working on scheduling through the end of the year. If you have any ideas for a panel discussion that you think would be really fitting for WARP's mission, or if you even would like to join our panel discussions committee and help us plan a number of months of programming, then please, you can either put a note in the chat and give me your email address, or I will put my email address in the chat and you can just email me and let me know your idea, or let me know if you'd like to join the committee. So we would love to have some input from members at large on this program. So I guess I should have started with the fact that we are WARP, which is Weave a Real Piece. We are an international textile networking organization, and our mission is to serve as a catalyst for improving the quality of life of textile artisans worldwide. And you can find more about WARP at weavearealpiece.org, which I will also put into the chat. So we welcome you. And with that, I'm going to introduce our presenters in our program today. So today we are learning about WEAVE, which is Women's Education for Advancement and Empowerment. WEAVE strives to create a world where empowered women and their children are free to exercise their rights and live peacefully in a just, humane, and equitable society. WEAVE works in refugee camps and villages in Thailand. And today we are joined by Susu Hauser and Blake Holtsbaum, who have both spent time working in the Bon Mae Surin camp in Thailand. And we also have a special video interview with Sam May, who is one of the weavers who is taking refuge in the camp in Thailand. So Blake is going to begin the program with some contextual and background information. So I'll begin by introducing Blake. Blake Holtsbaum is an advocate for refugee education, serving as an advisor to the Karenni Leadership College in the Bon Mae Surin camp in Thailand. In Canada, he works on climate policy for the provincial government of British Columbia, volunteers as a teacher's assistant with newcomers to Canada, and as a community advocate for Next Gen Men. So Blake, welcome to you.
Well, thank you so much. I'm seeing something on screen here. Is that okay? All good. So I will get into it. There we go. Should be full screen now. All right. Hello, Yeah, perfect. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. As Kelsey said, I am Blake Holtsbaum. So I am going to discuss a little bit of my education work I did with Weave, but I'm mostly aiming to give a bit of context to the situation in Myanmar and what life is like in the camps, as it is broadly applicable to the work that Weave does and will hopefully help inform the other presentations. So I'm going to be a little bit unconventional, and before introducing myself, I'm going to give a quick rundown on the history of Burma, renamed to Myanmar fairly controversially in 1989, and explain why the refugee camps in Thailand exist today. So Burma was incorporated into the British Raj in 1886, notably the low-lying states, so that is Irrawaddy, Yangon, Bago, and parts of Magwe and Mandalay, were administered directly, whereas the surrounding highlands, which is the rest, were given more autonomy, with local rulers just paying tribute to the British. Britain created an internal army from these areas, which they used to subjugate the more populous interior lowland states. When Japan invaded in 1942, the highlands remained loyal to the Allied powers, whereas the central lowlands aligned themselves initially with the Japanese, but then 2 years later broke this alliance and began rebelling against them as well. So after the war, Burma was returned to the British with acceptance that independence would soon be following, the expectation, I should say. So when this did happen in 1948, it was a highly fractured country and one with very little pre-colonial historical basis. So only a few months after this, the Karen National Union, fighting from the Cayenne state, started fighting for their own independence. And the Karenni National Progressive Party, through their armed wing, the Karenni Army, joined later in 1957. So on the map, the Karenni state is listed as Kaya. These names were changed by the central government to try and divide locals by centering the dominant ethnic group. And this is effectively what happened with the name change from Burma to Myanmar as well. So this fighting continued all the way up until 2012. Things began to imperfectly but slowly improve afterwards for most of the country's people, though fighting did continue up north in the Kachin state, and the highly publicized genocide of the Rohingya in Rakhine, so it's on the west side, began in earnest in late 2016. Then in 2021, the Myanmar military seized full control of the central government in a coup, leading to a civil war that has basically escalated ever since and continues today. All right, so though it is an imprecise measurement, Burma can be considered the world's longest running conflict, now stretching 76 years. So fighting in the Karenni state became especially bad during the 1990s, which is when most of the camps that you see on the map here in Thailand were created. While some people managed to go back to Myanmar during the brief peace following 2012, many have been born and lived their whole lives in the camps, so they have nothing to return to. The Myanmar military also burned down a lot of villages, so even for those who did have a home, it probably hasn't existed for 20 plus years. So today there are 90 to 100,000 people living in these camps and far more living in temporary shelters set up on the border. So when I was there in Bame Sareen, which is pictured here, it was the smallest of the 9 camps, but it has grown by about 800 people due to increased fighting in the Karenni state and is now the second smallest. Okay, so hopefully that context helped a little bit. With that out of the way, who am I? So I am currently a policy analyst for the British Columbia provincial government in Canada, but from September of 2022 to March of 2023, I worked with Weave as a policy and education intern. Broadly speaking, my original task was to see if there was a pathway to accreditation for the Karenni Further Studies program, which has since been renamed the Karenni Leadership College. So KNLC for short is a post-10 school serving the camp. In 2 years, it wants to transition into a full community college as grades 11 and 12 are being added to the high school system in the camps for the first time this year. The school year runs June to March, so the first grade 11s ever would have began school just 3 weeks ago. So KNLC is entirely community run. All the teachers are camp residents themselves. Funding comes from the diaspora abroad and from tuition from the students. This is actually quite remarkable to me, as working is not officially allowed in the camps. Taiwan never signed the 1951 UN Declaration on the Rights of Refugees, so residents have many, many limitations. Besides not officially being allowed to work, they are also not permitted to leave the camps lest they risk deportation or like significant fines. I think it's $2,000, and they make about $100 a month, so a lot of money. So this is another reason that the source of income that weaving provides is so crucial, as it is one way to make money in the camps. So Weave, the organization, has in the past provided financial support to the school, but This is unfortunately dependent on donor priorities. So right now they're just focusing on logistical support, like bringing things into camp or trying to connect people with the time and resources who might be able to help, like me, I guess. So why is education important? I mean, besides, I think it's fairly obvious, but there are a couple reasons I want to highlight. The first is that it is an avenue to building and supporting their community. Over 70% of people in leadership positions in the camp are graduates of KNLC, and many more work for NGOs as camp representatives for the community-based organizations and as teachers. So the stronger KNLC is, the stronger the community becomes. Second, it is a pathway out of the camp. It is a very difficult one, but it does exist. First, they need to get one of the limited slots of, I think there's 2 schools providing Myanmar migrant GEDs. Then they have to get accepted into a university. After that, they will need to obtain a scholarship, of which there's a lot of demand and only so much supply, because whether they are in Thailand or elsewhere, they are still considered international students with the higher tuition that comes alongside that. And then finally, they have to get a visa. And this is currently, I would say, the hardest step of all. Thailand considers them to have entered the country illegally. So to get an education visa, they are forced to return to Myanmar to apply. So this is not only dangerous for their safety because of the ongoing war, but a new conscription law was passed in the fall for, I think it's women aged 18 to 27 and men aged 18 to 35. So they risk being drafted by the regime they fled in the first place. Thankfully, Thailand is allowing the UNHCR, that's the UN High Commissioner of Refugees, to do registration after 15 years of not allowing it. This is required for third country resettlement if they want to move to a place like US, Australia, or Canada. And as many will want to go to school when they come over, it's still important to have that education background. All right, so I hope that has been helpful adding some context, and will continue to be with the presentations you see after mine. I know the warp is largely focused on artisanal work, so I don't want to take up too much more time, but I will quickly highlight what came of my time in camp. So here's the table of contents for the report I wrote. The 9 recommendations are based off qualitative interviews with the teachers, camp leadership, and parent group representatives, as well as my own classroom observations and some fairly significant, I'd say, desk research. So I feel very fortunate as I was living in camp Monday to Friday with a few exceptions, but I was in camp every week for the entire 6 months I was there. And I was the only outsider in the camp anywhere near that regularly. So I got to build really strong relationships with the teachers and students, and hopefully understand their specific context well enough that my recommendations are relevant to their needs. So all of the, can you hear me? Heard a little beep on the, good, cool. So all of my recommendations were accepted, which is awesome. A few haven't been implemented as thoroughly as others, but I am really pleased to say that when I returned to camp this February for their week-long leadership camp, I was just blown away by the quality of presentations I saw. So through the hard work of the teachers and the principal, things do look to be improving. So yeah, thank you again for having me. If I can just add, I know there's a lot of information there and I talked a lot about some negative topics, but I do want to highlight that this is an extremely resilient and capable community. Their joy, despite all that they continue to overcome, is truly infectious. And I'm hoping, I think it does, but I'm hoping that you'll see that shine through in Susu's presentation after mine. So thank you. And there's contact information on screen if you ever have any questions or you just want to connect.
Great. Thank you so much for that. Fantastic. Next, we have the great opportunity to hear from May, who is one of the residents in the camp. Susu is going to be sharing a video interview that's about a little less than 5 minutes long with May. So I'll introduce May, and then Susu will share the video. So May is Karenni by ethnicity, and she is currently residing in northern Thailand. She devoted her life in the service of the Karenni people who are displaced in temporary shelters on the Thai-Myanmar border. She is actively involved in the protection and promotion of children's and women's rights and advancement in the context of refugee confinement through Weave Foundation. So Susu, let's see the video.
Alrighty. Ready.
My name is May. I am Assistant Director of Bahama Program at Weave Mae Hong Son. I grew up in a village in Karenni State, Bulacan. When I was 12, my mother died. My father was already at the border to Thailand to fight the Burmese military. I decided to join him and my older sister at the border because I needed someone to take care of me and my future life. The journey to reach my father was very tough. I walked for over 1 month, have to be aware of many military checkpoints and got malaria. When I first arrived, I was not very happy because everything was new and my whole life changed very quickly. I didn't know anyone or have friends, which made me sad. When I first arrived, I didn't understand the language as most people spoke Gaya or Karen. I only knew Yindale and Burmese, so I have to adapt to the new environment. After a while, I learned Gaya and Karen and found my place in the community and new friends. For education, we have to improvise. We didn't have a facility, a good curriculum, teachers, or school building. We have to find our own way, write our own curriculum, and the community build a school. Sometimes we would just learn under a tree because there was no alternative. I joined Weave in 2001. The organization worked for the empowerment of women and children of marginalized Karenni community and Thai host communities close to the refugee camps. I encountered a lot of hardship when I first arrived in the camp. I wanted the new generation receive good educational system to live a dignified life. The project of Weave are very helpful for me, community, and empower people in their personal lives. I even amidst ongoing conflict and displacement, we give people the feeling that their lives matter and their skills are needed and meaningful. MTBMLE means Mother Tongue-Based Multilingual Education. It entails teaching young children to learn first in their mother tongue. It was proven to be successful and children enjoy the teaching at school more than in the past. This made me very happy because they are the new generation of our community and our future leaders. The teaching with MTB-MLE is more student-centered and help young people to grow personally and strengthen their ethnic identity. It gives identity to their daily life because it empowers their education and future actions. Women artisans recognizing women's personal identity, which were taken from them the moment they turned refugees. It is empowering to giving back dignity and acknowledgement of women's skills, which they can use to make a living. Yes, I'm very proud to be part of the Karenni community. Each of us have our own culture, identity, a language, story, food, clothes, and beliefs. We are a diverse community and strive for federal democracy within our state and Burma as a whole. The Karenni have a long history of fighting for their independence and political recognition. Until now, we are still fighting, but we never give up and we try to be resilient. Thank you. I hope this is helpful. Bye.
Wonderful. Okay. Next, I'm going to introduce Susu, and she'll share about herself and her work. So Susu Hauser is a world traveler, cinematographer, and photographer, specializing in documentary filmmaking. She is known for her ability to capture extraordinary imagery while connecting impactful narratives that bring awareness to issues and drive viewers to action. Her latest venture, The Art of Resilience, is an immersive multimedia gallery celebrating the art, culture, and resilience of indigenous artisans around the world. And that is, Susu, share with us too the dates and location of your exhibition.
Ooh, dates and location. Reception, so it's going to be at Durham Arts Guild, Truist Gallery. And reception is October 18th and also November 15th, and it runs that whole time.
Great. So if you are in North Carolina, you can check out the full feature, and Susu's going to be sharing some, I think if I understand, we're the first people seeing some of the highlights of the finished documentaries. So very exciting. And Susu, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you first for this opportunity. I know that this is such a beautiful net of individuals that are supporting artists all around the world, and I'm grateful to be part of it and to have this opportunity. Thank you, Blake, so much for the context. That's not my forte. Public speaking is also not my forte, so I'll just give you a brief background on my why and what led to this project. To begin with, how did I find Weave? My mom was a Hungarian refugee in 1956. She escaped Hungary during the revolution, and I grew up with all of her stories, and they've resonated with me all throughout my life. I sat her down, I did interviews in 2015, and basically I found out later on that I wanted to work in the capacity with refugees. And so I started doing a bunch of research and I came upon Weave. And the other thing that really struck me about this organization was the holistic approach to empowerment and education of refugee women. And so lastly, what also drew me was Thailand. I've had a magnetism towards Thailand since 2000 when I first visited. It was my first backpacking trip and solo backpacking trip. And I fell in love with the country. I fell in love with the people and the culture. And so here I was 20 years after my last backpacking excursion and with a very different purpose now. My last two trips were pleasure. This one had a mission. And so I would like to share, so yes, these videos that I'm going to share with you are behind the scenes basically to the gallery. And they're also just windows into the world of these artisans. So I will, hold 1 second. This first video is, I call it my ode to Thailand and ode to Weave. Thailand. I fell in love with you 20 years ago, and here we are again. In a different time, with a different purpose. New faces, new worlds, new teachers, and new blessings. Why do I keep coming back? How could I not? It's no wonder you're called the land of smiles. You bring me wonder. You give me hope. You teach me resilience. You make every fiber in my being smile. So that's the first video. I hope you get the essence of weave through the video, through the images, and through what I'm able to share. And so what I wanted to highlight most was my time with the third community that I visited, and it's a Karen community of artisans. And they introduced me to, I got my feet wet with natural dye process, and it blew my mind. And I can't wait to get back out at it. And so this next video is my first day with that community, being led by Mong, who was the marketing director with Weave. She's not there any longer, but she will be our host and translator, and working a lot with Sakuni, who has lived in that community for over 40 years. And she really heads everything there. And she's got this beautiful dual personality of fierce and playful. And we really connected. So on to natural dye. Hold on one second. First lesson in Ban Mei Se Pei. There is nothing singular about the natural dye process. It is a collective community effort weaving ancestral wisdom and traditions with preservation of our natural world. Second lesson, don't take more than you need.
They will not do a mass productions, but they will use a little to little because they want to protect the tree as well. This tree, when she was very young, her mother told her how to use it and then how to protect the tree for the next generations. This is the oldest tree, that they show to us. For like other people, like men, they will not interest in these activities. That is why women really have a good knowledge how to protect, how to preserve the resources. Teak wood. The baby teak wood can produce the colors, like a plum color. Okay, we're going to get the turmeric that can produce the yellow color.
Mordants are also collected on our outing. A mordant is a substance used to set dyes on fabrics. Ash is gathered from a fire pit and used to set the plum dye from the teak leaves. Mud is gathered from a special source that Sakuni's family has been visiting for decades, and this will fix the deep purple bluish hue from the tree bark shavings to the fabric. When we return, it's all hands on deck. The women begin chopping the bark, cleaning the undyed threads, preparing the mordants, and starting the fires.
They do boiling 30 minutes, and because of they have two stoves now, later they will boiling the turmeric. The mysape bark tree produce the navy color like a dark blue. Teak leaf produce the plum color, plum, yeah. And turmeric produce the yellow. Number two, that is mean they boiling second times. First time, the color will more bright, more pink. But this is second time, it's lighter pink.
Once the bark and leaves are removed from the pots, the undyed threads are added and boiled for 20 minutes.
The ingredients themselves, they cannot really get or produce strong colors. So they need the mordants to help. This is ash. This is rust.
The newly dyed threads are removed from the boiling pots and cooled down before soaking in the mordants for 5 minutes. And we'd repeat the entire process again for the turmeric. Only this time, adding a little bit of magic.
After it's dry from the dyeing, tomorrow they will just wash with water and then hang to dry it again, and then that's it.
This day opened a whole new world to me, leaving me satiated and still longing to know more. So that was day one. Day two was followed by backstrap weaving. And I gotta say, I thought I considered myself fairly schooled in handmade, but when I try to figure out backstrap weaving, I can't for the life of me. So this video is about learning the foundations of it. Okay, hold on one second. Boop, boop, and boop. What I know about backstrap weaving is that I know nothing at all. It was clear that this century-old art form would take more than a couple hours of filming to understand. Yet I left with a new appreciation for strong foundations in the creative process. Hours upon hours went into preparing the thread and warping the loom, the most difficult task of the backstrap weaving technique. A meticulous and seemingly meditative process of weaving rows of threads and figure eights around evenly spaced rods.
If they want to produce shawl, scarf, or even the fabric, even the blouse, all made of bamboo, except this is the quite permanent one. They use the metal because this is can control the size that will consistency.
Once the desired width is achieved, the threads are taken off the warping rods and put onto looming rods. The top of the loom is carefully attached to a stretch of bamboo, and the bottom is secured to a back support.
This is the skin of the deer. This is for long time, maybe since her mother, and people cannot find anymore. This is long time ago. It's very strong. Yeah, very flexible, and then it's help women's on the back to tight with the loop.
Once the warp bars, heddle stick, and shed stick were all assembled, I watched, mesmerized as they passed the thread through, opened the shed, and repeated the process. Layer upon layer, the design began to emerge. And I was reminded why there is no touch or feeling like that of handmade. Ta-da, ta-da. So that was day 2. I got a schooling, but again, I'm still in the dark. I'd like to know more. Day 3, it was just a beautiful end to all of my filming. I was there for 3 weeks and visited the 3 locations, Camp 1, Camp 2, and then Ban Mese Pay. And last day was walking through the forest and learning about all of their resources, and it was an absolute blast. It was my favorite day of, I think, of all of the filming, and I got to be barefoot, and that's also a bonus. I'm going to pull up, hold on. Yeah. Barefoot is bliss. It was happenstance I brought the wrong footwear today. But turns out, bare feet are the perfect option in foraging through the community forest in search of makings for baby frog soup, a traditional Karen dish. Through currants and cow patties, the community shared what their environment had to offer.
Tamarind. This is fern. People will love to eat. It can make many dishes. Example, like we can stir fry with oyster sauce.
That's what we call stir food.
This one Karen people call bird. This is a kind of like bee. Karen women, they use these bees to decor their blouse. They embroider with the blouse. That's a kind of traditional, and only Karen people they use this kind of bee, but it have different shape.
What struck me even more than the bounty of their surroundings was their eagerness to share it. And their eagerness was met by my wonder and reverence. Reverence for a window into their world and their way of living. This was my last day of filming with Weave, and what a bookend. I felt rooted, I felt enlightened, I felt freedom, and I felt connection. You can't ask for much more. Ta-da, da, 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 da. That's all I got for you.
Thank you. Your films are absolutely stunning. That was such a treat to get to see them.
I'm glad to share it with this community. Absolutely. Thank you.
I'm going to welcome, please, we have plenty of time left for Q&A, so please share any questions you have in the chat. And in the meantime, Susu, there were a couple of technical questions that were asked. We'll see if you know the answer. So the first is, do you know what type of fiber they're dyeing and then weaving with?
I was just told cotton thread.
Cotton thread? Okay, so it's a cotton. And do they spin the fiber into the yarn before dyeing, or is it a pre-spun, more commercial yarn that they're working with? Do you know?
I think both.
Okay. Yeah, I thought I glimpsed a spinning wheel
Yeah.
in the background of one of your
Yeah.
panning shots. So,
Yeah.
okay. And then maybe while we wait for a few other questions to come into the chat, I know that you got a little bit of information about how the weaving enterprise works, and I'd love for you to share about that with us. So anything that you know about sourcing of materials or how the weavings are sold in support of the weavers in the community.
Yeah, absolutely. I reached out to Mito just to make sure that I had the right information. But right now, Weave works with 89 different artisans. There are 54 in Karenni Site 1, so that's Camp 1. There are 35 in the Thai Village, which you just saw, you got a window into. The artists are recruited by their community, by the artists. Artists go around in the community and see who needs the most help, basically, and that's how they are recruited. The way that they get their materials, obviously in the Thai village, they have resources available. They are also within driving distance of Kunyam district where they can get materials as well. But in the case where Weave has an order, then Weave supplies the materials to the communities. What else? Oh, there's always a leader in a community that is in charge of quality control and orders. And in this case, it was Sakuni that leads that community. May, I interviewed in Camp 1, and she's an incredible leader, very young and just go-getter. What else? The weave operation is all home-based. They do all of the backstrap at home. The accessories, well, some of the weave collection include home and kitchen accessories, bed sheets, pillow, cushion covers, wall hangings, table runners, placemats, fashion accessories, shawls, scarves, women's hats, purses, bags, ornaments, children's toys. What percentage do artists receive for their creation? Weave artisans receive whole labor fee for the particular product each refugee artisan makes. The cost of raw materials is borne by Weave. And a traditional scarf, they earn around 200 baht. And usually their earnings are used for food, snacks for their children, food at school, or to contribute to household needs. And lastly, Weave pairs with UN bodies and UNHCRs that are in support of the private sector initiatives to fundraise corporate funding for refugees. Does that answer some of the logistical?
I think so. Yeah, that was very informative. Thank you, Susu. So they're not necessarily I mean, the consumers are, it's basically orders funneling through Weave, if I'm understanding. So we couldn't necessarily go to a website and purchase something if someone was interested.
So they partner also with Made 51, which is they're a blanket of refugee enterprise. And so I believe they sell Weave.
Oh, and I also see Blake just shared a link.
Yeah.
Yeah, tell us about this, Blake.
Yeah, Blake.
So yeah, most of the orders they have do go through Made 51, I think the vast majority, but they do have a site where you can buy some products, not all of them. The ones that you see online there, that stuff is all like commercial fabric. And I think it's cotton and rayon. So it's the fabric costs are a bit more. I think the natural dyes you see in the pillowcase covers. So there's a lot more products than just what is on the website, but that mostly go through yeah, these other organizations. There's an NGO in Germany, I can't remember the name they work with, and then Made 51. But there is a small number that you can purchase on the website there.
Great, thank you. And so that's in the chat, and it's also weavefairtrade.com. Great. And Martha shared a number of other links in the chat. Thank you, Martha. So we have weavewomen.org, we have Susu Hauser's website, susuhauser.com, and made51.org. Thank you for that. We have a question from Eleanor, and I'm not sure if you'll know this, Susu, since I think you just read pretty much all the information you know about the textile enterprise, but she asks, since so much of the work is communal, how are the sales proceeds shared? Do you know that?
Well, I do think that the batch strapping part of it is individualized. That's what I found. I believe they were coming together as a community to show me for film. But so the natural dye process is a collective. So that part of it is collective. But I would think that they would just get paid as individuals as far as their backstrap weaving. I don't know.
That makes sense. You mentioned a price like 200 baht for a
Exactly.
standard
The
scarf.
scarf. Yeah.
Yeah, so it sounds like there must be a price association per item.
Right.
Great. Okay, Mary asks, what do you know about weaving design sources? Are they passed down from families or gotten from books, or where is that coming from, the design
There
inspiration?
is a traditional Karen design, definitely. And I believe the fundamentals of that are passed through the generations. And then they also do have creative workshops with the communities. They're just not as often as they want to be, I think. I think maybe they get in 1 or 2 creative workshops where they can learn different designs and techniques.
Great. And Blake, do you have something to add?
They also had one woman in, I think, Camp 1 who was like, I can't remember what her official title is, but she created designs for the company that would get passed down. And one of the scarves or shawls on the website I shared is called the Bome, and that's because she made it. So they did also have someone on staff in the community who, in addition to what Susu said.
Great, thank you. I'm remembering that when we had our rehearsal call, we discussed, Blake, you shared that because the people who are in the refugee camp are not legally allowed to work in Thailand, that's part of why the Weaving Initiative is so important. It provides the income. I'm wondering if a couple of things that makes me wonder are, one, how is that kind of worked around the no working regulation, and also if there are any other sources of income that you know of in the camp.
Yeah, the authorities kind of turn a bit of a blind eye because they know that they have to be able to live. So most of the income sources are either like, there's a little economy in the village, like selling internet for the day is 40 baht, so about $1.50 American. And then just a little market, people that bring in goods. And then also like building, some people are decent, like they have to rebuild their houses usually every 5 years because they're all made of bamboo because they're not allowed permanent settlements. So some of the people in the community are just better at that. And if they can't afford to, we'll pay them to do so. Some of that money is coming in from diaspora, and some of it is just like earned this little market. And then if they're working on like a nearby farm, the authorities tend to turn a blind eye. Like if they're found, an hour away from camp walking, not a big deal. If they're found in Chiang Mai or Bangkok or something like that, that's when they're going to start facing fees and stuff. So yeah, and then as far as like the weaving goes, none of them can hold bank accounts. So it'd be a company, like you basically need an organization like Weave to hold these accounts, then pay them in cash when they do visits. So because I would go often more times than Weave staff would, sometimes I just have an envelope and I just pass that envelope off to one of the people in camp who was involved, and then they would distribute it to everybody.
Thank you. That's very informative. And then there's kind of a follow-up question here from Martha. Who establishes the rules against working? Do you know the reasoning behind this?
The Thailand government, specifically the Ministry of Interior, handles most of it. Most of these restrictions are because Thailand, you have push and pull factors as the terms used. So a push factor for people leaving is of course the war, but pull factors can be anything from like education to access to food, or like access to higher wages. So they don't want people coming into Thailand to work and then claiming a refugee status, when Thailand would view it, it's not my opinion, but like Thailand would view it as maybe the part of the country they're in is not that dangerous. And like prior to 2021, especially so. So they've just put a lot of restrictions in place to kind of keep them separated and not try and encourage more people to come.
Thank you for explaining that. That really helps to understand. Okay, there's another question about design. Is there a lot of lost design as lives have been disturbed by being refugees, etc.? Do you know if did you hear anyone speaking to that or see any evidence of that?
No, I did not. I did not experience anybody speaking to it. No. I interviewed two women, Sakuni and Manita, in the Thai village. And I don't recall either of them speaking to that.
Okay, thank you. The next question is addressed to both Blake and Susu. Do you know if the communities are able to grow their own food, or do they have to rely on outside suppliers?
It's both, I guess. So if you're in the camps, there's chickens everywhere. It makes it difficult to sleep. But and lots of cows and goats and stuff like that. So, they're not killed for meat that much, but like eggs that come from the chickens are a big part of the diet. And then yeah, there are little like growing areas. The area that at least the Camp 2 is in is very mountainous with pretty steep terrain. So the growing area is relatively small. Some of the work that like other NGOs do is trying to build more resilient food sources. So they will bring in seeds and like go through types of like more sustainable crop rotation or like utilizing soil more efficiently, but it isn't enough. So they do also have to bring in a lot of food as well.
And Susu, your video, I mean, the last one showed, is it called young frog soup, or what was that?
Baby frog soup.
And you showed them foraging and collecting. So we definitely saw evidence of that, as well as some fields of farming, it looked like in some of your videos.
Yes, so these women, their main livelihood is farming. It's corn and rice. And yes, their backstrap weaving is their second livelihood. Yeah. For the Thai village. And then just like Blake said, there's the livelihood projects within the camps that Weave also works with.
Mhm. Great. Well, thank you both so much. We have a few minutes left if someone would like to share another question. While we see if anyone has another question, Susu, you had shared some information about your GoFundMe. I will put that in the chat. I'll pull that up and put it in the chat if you'd like to just give a kind of overview of the link of the fundraiser.
Thank you. And it does feel weird. It feels weird dividing funds, between Weave nonprofit and then this project. However, I am seeking upfront exhibit costs for the Art of Resilience project. For 2 years, I volunteered my time and traveled the world. I went to Guatemala, the highlands in Guatemala, and filmed with multicolores and Maya women that are doing rug hooking and embroidery. And then I traveled to the Thai-Burma border and learned about backstrap weaving and natural dye process. And then lastly, in November, I was in Namibia working with an organization called Omba Arts Trust, and they are preserving an ancient tradition of creating jewelry and wall art from eggshells, ostrich eggshells. So the purpose of this it started off as a documentary, and now it's taking fruition into a multimedia exhibit, which will feature these videos. It'll feature life-size portraits of the artisans, and it will feature products from all over the world from these 3 nonprofits. And all proceeds will go to the nonprofits and whatever the gallery's taking, the percentage that the gallery's taking. But so yes, so the GoFundMe is just a little background on what's gone into this project over the last 2 years and the vision for this exhibit.
Thank you, Susu. And I shared the link here in the chat if you'd like to check that out. We have just a couple of final questions that did come in. So Nancy asks, are men involved at all in the weaving dyeing process?
No, it didn't sound like it. That's what Mong was saying. They don't go and gather anything. It's not their interest. I think they stick to farming, but it didn't look as though any of the men, no, were involved in the natural dye process. Yeah.
Okay. And then the final question from Carol Ventura, were the Thai village weavers native or refugees?
Native.
Yeah, I can expand on that a little. So
Sure.
they are, the people in the camps are ethnically Karen and Karenni, which is an ethnicity that spans the border region of Thailand and Myanmar, more in Myanmar than Thailand, but the people in the villages are ethnically Karen, so the same ethnicity, but were born in Thailand and, are not, they're full Thai citizens. They don't have the same restrictions as the refugees do.
Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you. Okay, there's a nice final comment from Martha. She says, thank you, Susu, for capturing these beautiful stories and sharing them with the world. Thank you, Susu, for sharing them with us. And Blake, thank you so much for your time as well, sharing the background information and all of your insights. I really appreciate both of you being with us today and sharing about Weave. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much for this opportunity, really. This has been great.
Yeah, thank you for having us. It was a lot of fun, and it's nice to get off work for an hour for something that's far more fulfilling.
Great. Well, thank you both, and thank you all for taking time to join us today. We'll have a follow-up email going out in the next couple of days with the recording and a compilation of all of the links that were shared in the chat so that you can check all of those out if you didn't have a chance to take them down today. So thank you again, and enjoy the rest of your day, everyone.